we have a couple more units left. So we go through chapter 3, which is about logic. Then we skip around quite a bit and move into chapter 7 and 8. And those are the last sections that we end up going through, I believe. But let me double check in our schedule. I am on Canvas. Let's see. So I think we have 2 more tests after this third one. We have 5 tests in total yet. So you'll have another test on chapter 3, and then we'll go through chapter 7 and 8, which will be about conversions and also geometry. And so you'll have a test on that right before the end of the semester. Okay. So this one's going to be a little bit different than what we've actually been used to. You're going to see some similar notation and you're going to see some similar words, but we're going to be working with things quite a bit differently. So logic is something that you really use in your day-to-day life. You constantly are trying to prove some type of argument. You have some statements that then give way to some conclusion. So obviously when you're writing papers, you're doing something more intense, but most statements have some type of truth value to it. They're not subjective. So the first section we're going to go through is 3.1. It's about statements and logical connectives. We're going to start 3.2 today as well. And you connect things a ton in your daily life. I do it all of the time in all of my notes here when I'm talking to any individual. So we use words like and, or, if, then to connect our thoughts. And just think about talking with your friends, trying to figure out something to do. Oh, let's go to the movies and go to dinner. Oh, why don't we go mini golfing, or let's go to the park. If it's raining, then let's go to the movies instead. So you kind of use these phrases without even realizing that you do. All of these types of words are called connectives. These phrases, you could say. So we'll just say these are called connectives, because they connect 2 different types of thoughts. Okay. Now with or, you technically have 2 different types of or. So I'm going to go over both of them, but we're going to consider only one when we say this word. So the exclusive or does what it says. If I say this or this, you can only pick one. So one event or the other can take place. But not both. And so I'm going to give you an example for both of these types of or. Think of if maybe you got charged with something. You were speeding. You can pay a $100 fine, or do 5 months of community service. You're definitely not going to want to do both of those. You have one that you have to complete for this to happen. So you're going to pick the $100 fine, or you're going to pick the community service, not both. The other type of or is what's known as inclusive. And this is what we're going to consider every time we hear or for our class. And this means one event or both can happen. Okay. And so think of if you're out to dinner and you're over the legal age of 21 and your waiter asks you, would you like a glass of wine or a glass of water? You can absolutely do both. You can pick a glass of wine, you can pick a glass of water, or you can pick both of them. So we are going to consider this. Either one is going to be acceptable. So we will use, or we will assume, the inclusive or in this chapter. Okay. And so we have a lot of definitions that we're really going to talk about, and then we'll talk about how to connect these. But each of these phrases is going to correspond to a certain type of statement. So let's start with, what is that? We are going to have a ton of statements in here. Okay. So a statement is something that you're going to make that has a truth value. So this is a sentence that can be judged true or false. Okay. So you say something, it could be true, it could be false. You might not know at that exact moment, but that's okay. One of those is possible. It's not going to be subjective. The negation of a statement is kind of like the opposite meaning. So this changes the statement to its opposite meaning / truth value. Okay. So I'm going to give you a sentence or a statement. If I tell you Disney World is in New Jersey, that is definitely something that is false, but it is a statement because it can be judged true or false. But definitely this is false. Its negation is going to change its meaning. But I don't want to completely change the sentence. Like, I don't want to change any of the subjects. Disney World, New Jersey should still be in there. What I want to do is add something to change the value to true. So its negation is going to add a single word. Disney World is not in New Jersey. That is the exact opposite of what the statement says before. And what it does is it turns it into something that is a true statement. Okay. And the reverse is true. If I started with this statement, its negation would be the one before it. So it changes that truth value. Okay. Now, the problem is if we're working with negating statements, when you throw in quantifiers, like talking about some amount of things, the negation becomes a little bit harder. So we want to think about the fact that it has to change the truth value. Okay. So ultimately, when quantifiers, and this is words like all, none, some are involved, we have to be careful with the negation. Okay. So the negation of a false statement should be true, and vice versa. If I start with something true, its negation should be false. Right? And so if I give you a sentence that you don't know, that's kind of completely whack, we want to go ahead and try to negate it. Going to be a little bit more difficult. So what I want to do is start with a sentence that we know right off the bat is true or false. So we're going to try to write the negation of the statement. And that statement is going to be all cats are orange. Okay. So this is our quantifier we have, the word all. I'm saying every single cat is going to be orange. And that is definitely false. There are cats that are plenty of different colors. We've got black cats, we've got white cats, we've got multicolored cats. So this is not a true statement. So off the get-go, this is a false statement. So its negation should be true. So a really common one that people want to change is immediately going from all to none, because that seems to think like it would be the opposite meaning. So let's think about how about changing it to no cats are orange. Okay. But the problem is here, that's still not a true statement. There are cats that are orange. So I went from a false statement to another false statement. So that's definitely not the right negation. Okay, so the problem is, this is not a true statement though. So this isn't the correct negation. It's along the right idea that going from all to none in that sense, because I want to basically imply in the opposite meaning that there's not orange cats as well. But instead of changing all to no, what we're going to do is change all to some. So there's a portion. So the correct negation is going to be some cats are, and then we want to add that not to change the meaning, orange. So I'm going from are this property to are not and changing that quantifier all to some. So let's look at some statements and their negation for all of these quantifiers. If I start with all are some property, its negation are going to change from all to some and are to are not. Okay, so just like this previous example. So these two will switch. If I start over here, its negation is going to be all are. If I say none are something, the none is also going to change, and it's going to change to are this property. So none are this property, now some of them are. So it gives it the opposite meaning. Okay. So if we're combining multiple statements, then we're working with something that's called compound, and that's where we're going to add in all of these extra words. So we're going to have symbols that we assign to each of our statements, and then our different connectives are going to have another type of symbol associated to it. So to kind of fit in some more definitions, and then we'll come back to this quantifier or negation. Statements consisting of two or more simple statements are called compound statements. So I'm going to connect a few different thoughts. And then our connectives like and, or, if one thing, then something else, and if and only if are used to combine these simple statements. Okay. So typically, we're going to work a lot in shorthand too. Each statement is going to be assigned a letter. So typically we assign letters like P, Q, R, and S to represent the simple statements. Okay. And then each connective is going to be symbolized by something. So they will be symbolized uniquely. Okay. So since we're working with this negation, let's start with that. The negation is symbolized by this little tilde sign, which you may see on your keyboard. Make that a little nicer because it keeps breaking up. It's basically that little squiggle right next to the one. But it's read as not. Some other books you might see will use a line with this bar down, but our book is going to use that little tilde symbol. Okay. So let's do a quick example with this and the negation. If P represents the statement, Ariel is your professor, can't even spell my own name, or the word professor for that matter today. Wow, I'm off my spelling game. There we go. So this represents a statement, Ariel is your professor. It has a truth value to it. Then not P is going to be the negation of this. So this would represent the statement, Ariel is not your professor. Okay. So it gives us a short way to combine everything. The next connective we have is that word end, and that's called our conjunction. So conjunction is symbolized by basically part of an A or an upside down V, and is read as the word end. So this looks a lot like that intersection symbol, which again, we take as this and this, it's what's in common. So you see there's a bit of a pattern going on. And then our union symbol deals with or, it flips the end upwards. That's going to happen for us in here as well. Before we talk about that, let's work with an example. We're going to write the statement in symbolic form. Okay. So we are told statement P is going to be the phrase, we will go to the gym. Statement Q is going to be the phrase, we will study. And again, these have truth values. Do you know if you're going to the gym right now? No, that's okay. Do you know if you're going to study? No, that's okay too. Right? But they will be declared true or false at some point. So the first phrase we're going to write in symbolic form is, we will go to the gym. And we will study. Okay. So this first phrase is exactly our statement P, we will go to the gym. We will study is exactly the phrase Q. And then we've got that word end in the middle. So we're going to combine that with our conjunction. So we can condense that longer statement into this short little notation. We do a second one and say, we will not go to the gym. And we will study. This first phrase now is the opposite of P, because we added that word not in. So that represents not P. The end in the middle is still our conjunction, which is symbolized by an upside down V. And then the final phrase is we will study still. That is Q. So this is represented very condensedly as not P and Q. Now let's bump it up a bit and add another statement or another type of connective in here. Our next one is called the disjunction. So disjunction is symbolized by a V and is read as or. Okay. So again, our or in terms of sets is union, which is a lot like this V. Intersection is representing end, which is symbolized by an upside down V. So they go hand in hand still. Right. So let's try another example, working with our symbolic form still. We're going to let the statement P be I am innocent. And the statement Q be I have an alibi. And then from here, we're going to write the statement in symbolic form. We're going to do two again. First one we're going to do is the statement I am innocent, or I do not have an alibi. So I am innocent is exactly our phrase P. The or is going to be our V symbol. And then the statement I do not have an alibi is the opposite of I have an alibi. So this is not Q. Do one more. We'll say I have an alibi, or I am not innocent. So be careful in your homework. Tries to trick you. I have an alibi is that statement Q. So I'm starting with Q. Our or is symbolized by a V. And I am not innocent is the opposite of statement P. So this would be not P. All right. There we go. Okay. We've got two more that we're going to talk about now. And these ones are a little bit harder just in terms of what they mean and how to interpret them in the near future when we talk about truth tables. But we have left our if-then statement and our if and only if statement. So we're going to start with our if-then. That's called the conditional. So the conditional is symbolized by an arrow going forward and is read as if then. Okay. So basically, if you see P with this arrow Q, this means if P happens, then Q happens. Okay. So because of that, each of these has a specific name. This comes first. It's called the antecedent. I can never say this word. And then what comes afterwards is a consequence of the first thing happening. So this is called the consequent. Okay. Our other one, if and only if, kind of means you can read the sentence both of these ways. So let's try the opposite now. We've put things into symbolic form. Let's take a symbolic form and translate it into words. So we're going to translate this symbolic statement to words. And so they tell us P is representing the word or the statement, I am innocent. Q is the statement, I have an alibi. And R is the statement, I go to jail. There we go. And so we're going to translate the statement first, P and not Q, to R. So if this stuff happens, then this thing happens. So here, if all of this stuff, then R. So things in parentheses still get grouped together. So I do the stuff in parentheses first, and then I apply that conditional afterwards. So in terms of phrases, this means if P, so if I am innocent, and not Q, so I am innocent and I do not have an alibi, then R happens. So then I go to jail. Okay. So this idea of working in parentheses first is going to be important when we get to truth tables. Things in parentheses happen in order, just like our order operations. Okay. All right. So the second thing we have, or our final statement, is the biconditional. Okay. And this is symbolized by a double-sided arrow and is read as if and only if. Or for shorthand, you put an IFF. Either one is going to be fine. But ultimately, this is going to be two conditionals in one, hence the word by. Okay. So it's kind of like you have if P, oh here, let me write it in terms of all of our symbols. If you have the statement P, if and only if Q, this means if P, then Q, and if Q, then P. Okay. So it's like you have a double-sided arrow. So it's like you have the forward one and the backward arrow. So reversing that order. Okay. So the arrow can go either way. So I'm going to do one last example, and that will be it for this section. But I will give a table kind of summarizing everything. P is going to be the statement, the temperature is 90 degrees. All right, give me a second, my pen is messing up. Let's rewrite that because that looks a hot mess. This is the statement, the temperature is 90 degrees. Statement Q is the air conditioner is working. And statement R represents the apartment is hot. And we want to first translate the given sentence into symbolic form. So we are told the apartment is hot. If and only if the air conditioner is working and the temperature is 90 degrees. Okay. So I've got a ton of statements in here. I'm going to start with this first one though, because it happens, and then I take that pause with that comma. So the apartment is hot is going to be the phrase or the symbol R. If and only if is our double-sided arrow. The air conditioner is working, and that's our statement Q. Okay. This comma is really indicating that these get grouped together first. So that first statement happens, and then afterwards, we're going to talk about the temperature. So this statement, the temperature is 90. Oh, sorry. Let's start with the statement N. That's going to be our N symbol. Then we have the temperature is 90 degrees. And that is our statement P. Okay. So be careful about your punctuation. It does indicate something else. If I said something completely different or put that comma in a different spot, it would change where I put those parentheses. So get some practice with these. It's going to take a little bit for you to get accustomed into translating. We're going to try one more where I'm going to give the symbolic form. So we've got Q with our arrow, and then P with our double-sided arrow, and R. Okay. So this is representing if Q happens, then we have P if and only if R. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of fill in then what Q and what this symbol mean in this phrase. So if Q happens, which is if the air conditioner is working, then P if and only if R. So then the temperature is 90 degrees if and only if the apartment is hot. Okay. So take your time, dissect everything slowly, and just get lots of practice. The more practice you get, the easier it'll become. Okay. So the very last thing I'm going to do is create a chart so you have it with the name of our connective, the symbol, how it's read, and what it's going to look like in symbolic form. So how it's going to appear when you're connecting those two thoughts. Why isn't this wanting to change to a straight line? There we go. So we've got 4 main connectives, and then we have that negation as well. So I'm going to start with our negation because that was our first one. The symbol you're going to see is that little tilde. It's read as not. So you're going to see not P, not something. Next one we learned after that is the conjunction. And this is going to be symbolized by an upside down V. It's read as end, and this has to connect 2 things. So P and Q. Then we've got the disjunction, which is our V. It means or. So you're going to see P or Q. Then we have our conditional, which is our arrow. It's read as if this first thing, then the second thing. And so you see an arrow pointing to that consequent. And then finally, we've got the biconditional, which is our double-sided arrow, which means if and only if. So you're going to see P, if and only if Q, which again, remember, has that double meaning. The arrow goes either way, and both are going to be true.